Tonight, C. Adrian Murphy speaks with Christine McCullough of the Philadelphia Archdiocesan Historical Research Center about the history and tradition of holy cards. And Father Pat Lavin encourages us to ponder and dance in the new year. Next on Catholic Magazine.
With your window on your world, this is Catholic Magazine. Good evening, everyone, and Happy New Year. I'm Paul Pirello.
Hi, I'm Pat Shelton. Happy 1993. Have you ever been to a candy-making plant? I think that would be a fun thing to do. And guess what? That's where we're going tonight, to find out how they make candy.
Also on tonight's program, we'll travel to the Mummers Museum in South Philadelphia as Father Pat Lavin struts his stuff in 1993.
But first, our Legacy series has shown us art in many different forms, and tonight is no exception as we look into the history and the art form known as holy cards.
Welcome back to Legacy. I'm C. Adrian Murphy, and today we're going to take a look at a very familiar item. If you're Catholic, or a lapsed Catholic, or have ever rubbed noses with the Catholic Church in any way, you have these in your life, the ubiquitous holy card. Today I have with me my real-life friend, Chris McCullough, who works in the archives of the Archdiocese at Philadelphia, located at St. Charles Seminary. Chris, I understand the archive staff is trained to attack and kill visitors who arrive without an appointment, though.
If that were only an option.
Well, please write or call before you go to the archives. But Chris has looked into the background of holy cards. I understand you had a tough time finding materials in English.
I certainly did. Most of them are written in German because that is where most of the cards originate from.
They were printed in Germany.
Yes.
Is this in the 19th century?
In the late 19th century, yes. They became popular here in the United States after the Civil War with the advent of chromolithography, when the cards could be printed easily in color.
They're beautiful. I noticed the colors on them. Also, some of the work, the lace handwork, do you think that's a die punch?
It's quite ornate.
They're beautiful. Now, they were given out on what kind of occasions originally?
Usually holy cards are used to commemorate a special occasion, such as a First Holy Communion or a confirmation. They're also used at the time of an ordination or if a religious is celebrating a jubilee. But most people come into contact with them naturally at a person's funeral. This would be an example of a funeral card from 1869, which is just a few years after the Civil War. So that's an excellent example of an early card.
It has the black border. Oh, this is the death of St. Joseph.
Yes.
Now, some of them are dedicated to particular saints, I notice, and I understand they go in and out of fashion.
You can get a card for practically any saint on the church calendar. The holy card suffered a bit in the years after Vatican Council when the more traditional images of Christ and the Sacred Heart were replaced with quotations from Scripture and the symbols such as the fish and the Chi-Rho. But I understand that more traditional cards and saints are coming back into favor these days.
Sounds like baseball cards, too many Dysters for us, Steve Carlton. Now, holy cards are still printed and given out today quite a lot. And
they are. They've changed a bit, though, over the years. Today's cards you're more likely to find either printed or encased in plastic, although you can still find the paper versions. An example of the newer card would be this here from St. Maximilian Kolbe. As you can see, it's encased in plastic, and it is a realistic portrait of him, not a romanticized image as they were previously.
It's him in the prison camp.
Yes.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they're beautiful, and thank you very much for enlightening me.
You're quite welcome.
And now we'll say goodbye for now. We'll see you next time, and we're going to go talk about men.
Now there's a unique hobby for you. I know we often give our daughters holy cards, and just think someday holy cards might become like baseball trading cards. I'll give you 2 St. Anthony's for perhaps 1 St. Joseph. Up next on this edition of Catholic Magazine, we travel to South Philadelphia. And look who's here. No, it's not Old Man Winter. It's not Father Time. It's Baby New Year. Father Pat Lavin takes us to the Mummers Museum as he struts his stuff.
Here we are, just 3 days into the new year, and I'm standing in front of the Mummers Museum at 2nd and Washington Avenue in Philadelphia. I think of the nervous ones who pushed this season and put up their decorations and their Christmas trees before Thanksgiving. And now, with the Feast of St. Stephen, they've already taken down the decorations and unceremoniously threw the Christmas tree out into the street, where it now sits at the curb, waiting for the trash men to pick it up. Oh, with the weather cooperating, the New Year's Day parades are over. I say parades because Philadelphia really has 4 parades, not just 1. The major one starts deep down in South Philadelphia and goes uptown with the sounds of music and dance and color, a great fanfare. And along the curbs on both sides of that broad street, there are 2 more parades that wind their way up and down the pavements. And then finally, as night falls, the mummers come here to 2 Street to dance the dance of the saints and to strut the best they can. Now's the time, the silent time, to ponder and to wonder the happenings of the past few weeks. It's a time of grace, a time of consideration. Christmas is over, and for many of us, the holidays were magnificent. For others, they were quite sad. And yet still, for others, they're looking forward to the Christmas next, when they give birth to the child within their womb. I'm reminded of the birth of Jesus the Christ. And I realize that Scripture becomes quite silent until his 12th birthday. When you find Jesus lost, the parents are scared to death, wondering what happened to him, and they find him again in the temple, sitting at the feet of the rabbi, listening to the words of wisdom coming from his mouth. And then silence again comes across Scripture until Jesus is a grown man, and we find him at the wedding feast of Cana and his first miracle. You know, it's funny, but the wedding feast of Cana reminds me of New Year's Day in Philadelphia and the parade. It's a time to meet old friends, to share greetings, to sip a glass of wine, and to wish one another peace, health, happiness, and prosperity. And it's a time to dance the joyful dance. Yes, I'm firmly convinced that Jesus really enjoyed the wedding feast of Cana. Why else make all that extra wine except to save the bride and the groom from a bit of embarrassment? You see, I can picture Jesus walking around the courtyard, seeing all the children playing jumping rope and ball, and patting them on the head and calling them by name. I can picture a Jesus who was introducing his disciples to the wedding party and sharing with them a few of their ideas about God and about their fellow human being. Oh yes, and I can also picture a Jesus when the band was struck up and they started to play Havana Gila or its equivalent, that he had to get out on that floor and dance a little bit to the right and a little bit to the left and pick up the chair with a groom on it and dance him around his new bride. Yes, this is a Jesus who was alive, a Jesus who was vibrant, a Jesus who knows how to ponder, and a Jesus who knows how to dance. When my particular sunset comes, this troubadour, when I reach the pearly gates, I'm going to put on my feathers and I'm going to strut right in to when the saints come marching in, or old them golden slippers. And when I meet Jesus, I'm certain that he's going to be able to teach me a new step or two as we go around the judgment seat at the heavenly city hall. Until you invite me into your home again, I wish you Happy New Year. I thank the mummers for all the joy that they bring to us, and I ask you to keep on with your song.
That's our incomparable Father Pat Lavin. I'm telling you. He's wonderful. He's a hard act to follow, but we're going to try when we come right back from these messages.
doing in this neighborhood?
What's he doing in this neighborhood?
If I cross to the other side of the street, he'll know I'm afraid.
If he wants money, I'll give it to him. It's not worth fighting for.
Get your hands out of your pockets. Be prepared to defend yourself.
Don't look him in the eye. Great. I'm here.
Sometimes we fear those who are different from us. We fear the unknown. Let's take time to get to know one another. We have a lot more in common than we may think.
Kathy, you must always remember that hitting is not acceptable. You're bigger, you're stronger. Don't hit. Whenever you feel yourself getting angry, you take time out. You know what time out is. You cool off and keep yourself from doing something you're going to be sorry for later. Do you understand?
Well, do you? Take time out. Don't take it out on your child.
We welcome your comments, suggestions, and donations and encourage you to write us at Catholic Magazine, St. Charles Seminary, 1000 East Wynwood Road, Overbrook, PA, 19096, or call us during regular business hours at 668-9842.
This is the time of year when many of us eat far too many sweets, which brings us to our next feature entitled A Sweet Job. It's about candy making and the lifestyles of some candy makers.
When Ben Strohecker started his gourmet candy company in Salem, Massachusetts, his method for choosing candy flavors was very scientific.
Harbor Sweets was a hobby to make the best piece of candy in the world, regardless of cost. And the way I determined what the best piece of candy in the world was by asking my peers where I worked, which was the Schraft Candy Company, if they could only eat one more piece of candy before they died, what would it be? And I recorded the answers. And the answers came from mostly consultants who were indeed the best candy people in the world. So the result was a pretty well documented product. And the most frequent mentioned item was a homemade chocolate-covered almond butter crunch made with a pound of butter to a pound of honey and sugar and toasted almonds in the inside and chocolate. They always said dark chocolate on the outside. And that became the sweet sloop, which is still our most popular item.
Ben's method of choosing flavors may have been scientific, but his choice of management style wasn't at all.
It was not out of carefully planning some management styles. It was all serendipity. We are part-time because when I started in my cellar, a few friends in our suburban neighborhood were willing to come into my cellar at their convenience and work as long as I needed them, but at times that were convenient to them. So that made sense, and we still do it today with 150 employees. We work 4-hour shifts, and they commit to 20 hours a week, so any combination of 5 4-hour shifts out of 16-hour days gives them an opportunity to work for us when they want to work for us.
The kids are sick, take time off, and he doesn't mind at all. So it works out. I like it. I mean, I think it's great.
I don't have the problems that some of the people have at home. All my children have grown and flown the coop. So I'm basically alone, and I can, you know, fill in maybe somebody's child is sick and they won't be here and they need an extra hand, and I'm available. Work it out that way.
Oh, I think it's terrific. I mean, I think anyone who's working in a place they want to be, at a time they want to be, and they're not worrying about the fact that they have to figure out how to get their child to daycare half an hour earlier than it opens, or something ridiculous like that, they can then think about what they're doing and be completely here when they're here. And that's really what we need people to do. And they can feel free to not be here when they can't be here. And I think that that makes people much more committed to what they're doing, because they're not resenting being here when they really would like to be somewhere else.
The other significant management difference here is that we operate totally on trust. We have no time clocks. We don't check credit for customers. You take a break when you want to, not when the bell rings and says you need to. And as a result, we've put the burden of trust on the people we deal with, which is a tremendous burden, because if I put the burden of trust on you with no reservations, if I decide to trust you, you're not going to violate that trust. So it works, and it's a far better way to have fun in business. What we tease about a guideline, we don't have policies here, we have a few guidelines, which is if you're not having fun, you're fired. Because I've gotten up in the morning and dreaded going to work, and I don't want anybody here who feels that way.
Everyone keeps their own time card and writes down their hours. And actually, I think probably Harbor Suites ends up being on the winning end of that, because if people are basically honest, and if you're not sure when you came in that morning, you're probably going to err on the side of putting down 5 minutes later than you think, as opposed to 5 minutes earlier. I think that people keeping track of their own time works out fine.
I've been warned at many points along the phenomenal growth of this little company that I could no longer have these strange management concepts like honesty and trust, and I'm proving so far that that I can, and I believe I can no matter how big I get.
Okay, the purpose of this meeting is to look at some preliminary...
Candy making isn't Ben's only interest. In 1989, he decided to take a year sabbatical, partly to prove that the business could run well without him. But he had also decided to pursue a personal project.
And that wasn't a difficult decision, because I've always wanted to spend a year in some kind of public service, really intensely involved. And I chose AIDS issues, trying to raise the awareness of AIDS, basically with people that looked like me, old, white, straight businessmen, who were not listening to the fact that AIDS was their issue. To quote Admiral Watkins, who headed the first AIDS, Presidential AIDS Commission, AIDS is a prism through which we see all of our social ills. And that what we really have to do, this is reminding us as Christians, is change the world. And I'm convinced we can with God's help, because if we are true to our Christian commitment, we must love everyone. Everyone includes the gay person, particularly the gay person with AIDS, and the IV drug user. And I have a very simplistic prayer that I use because I was raised as a bigot, and I've been prejudiced, and I couldn't get over this without help. And it ends up asking God to help me to love those who are least easy to love. and it works.
And with the new year just a few days old, perhaps there are some business leaders out there, some company owners who might take a few lessons, learn a few lessons from the piece that we just saw. And there is much more ahead on this edition of Catholic Magazine, so don't touch that dial. We'll be right back.
Ladies and gentlemen, the problem before us today threatens to completely erode our standing in the world market. Before we begin, I'd like to thank Johnson for bringing the problem to the board's attention. Let's hear the reports.
Every 53 minutes, an American child dies because of poverty.
Each day in this country, 100,000 children are homeless.
The children in schools today are the first generation of Americans to be more poorly educated than their parents.
25% of the infants born this year will be on welfare.
Children make up 27% of the general population, but they account for 40% of the people living in poverty.
As the numbers indicate, the situation has reached a crisis level. Johnson, you seem to have a clear picture of the problem. What's your assessment?
I'm more than a number, I'm a person. If you don't take care of me today, how do you expect me to take care of this country tomorrow?
Make an investment in the future. Take care of the children today.
My life could have taken a different path. By the time I was 8, I'd won 13 dancing medals. But looking back, I wouldn't change a thing. Oh, I can't show you a big pile of money I've saved, but I can show you a school and a hospital and people. So many people. Saving money for ourselves just didn't seem right.
Give to those who showed us how.
The Christian is certainly called to pray with others, but he must also enter into his room to pray to the Father in secret. Indeed, according to the teaching of the Apostle Paul, he should pray without ceasing.
Do you watch PSAs? I do. And Catholic Magazine offers some very good public service announcements. Well, finally, it's time to offer you some sounds of the season. And we've invited some young people to come in and help us ring in the new year.
Ding dong, merrily on high, the Christmas bells are ringing. Ding dong, heaven and earth reply, with angel voices singing. Gloria, sing glory to the highest. Gloria, sing glory to the highest. Fa la 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 la. Fa la la fa la la fa la la la. Fa la 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 la. Fa la la fa la la la. Fa la 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 la. Fa la la fa la la fa la la la. Fa la 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 la. Fa la la fa la la la. Fa la 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 la. Fa la 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 la. Fa la 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 la. Fa la 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 la. Bringing lenses looked out on the feast of Stephen. By the sleigh round about, deep and Christmas even. Brightly shone the moon that night, though the frost was cruel. When a poor man came in sight, gathering winter fuel. Ding dong, merrily and high, the Christmas bells are ringing. When does heaven reply?
What do you call that bell ringing, Paul?
I don't know.
I can't get anybody around here to tell me. I think it's called carillon. If I'm wrong, you'll write me and tell me, okay? But it was a nice way to take the holidays out, although we are still officially in the Christmas season. But we do have other things to go on to. And as an example, the Office for Ecumenical and Interreligious Affairs and the Office for Black Catholics of the Archdiocese of Philadelphia cordially invites you to attend the 10th annual Interfaith commemorative service in honor of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. at the Cathedral Chapel, Sunday, January 10th at 2:30. Please come on down. We have a great speaker and a great choir.
And it should be a great time, and that's next Sunday. That's right around the corner.
Yeah.
And of course, as I mentioned before, the new year just a few days old, and we hope that you will be with us throughout 1993 right here on Catholic Magazine. Again, a very happy new year to all of you. Until next week, I'm Paul Pirello.
And I'm Pat Shelton. We'll see you next time.
Good night.
SEP materials for Catholic Magazine provided by Tague Lumber Incorporated, serving the Delaware Valley for over 75 years. And by John Wanamaker, fine stores in the Delaware Valley. Legacy with C. Adrian Murphy is brought to you through the courtesy of the Joseph Grayton Institute at Old St. Joseph's National Shrine.